Welcome to Our True Identity, the podcast where we replace the lies we believe about ourselves with the truth of God's Word. I'm Craig, and you're listening to the third episode in our six-part series, Pathway to Peace, where we're walking slowly and intentionally through the full version of the Serenity Prayer, the version we speak together at Celebrate Recovery meetings, not just as a ritual, but as a lifeline. These words don't belong to recovery alone. They speak to anyone carrying pain, anyone longing for peace, anyone learning to live in truth. In the first two episodes, we explored what it means to live one day at a time and enjoy one moment at a time. We talked about presence, about learning to trust God not in the abstract, but in the breath-to-breath, moment-to-moment experience of real life. It's in those small moments of trust, when we stop controlling, when we slow down, when we choose to stay present, that peace begins to take root. Not because our circumstances are suddenly easy, but because our posture begins to change. We stop bracing against life, and we begin to receive it, even when it's hard. And that leads us to the next line of the Serenity Prayer, which is where we'll focus today. Accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. This is one of the more difficult lines in the entire prayer. It asks something from us that feels counterintuitive, maybe even impossible. How can hardship lead to peace? How do you accept pain without resigning yourself to despair? What does it mean to walk through suffering, not with clenched fists, but with an open heart? These aren't easy questions, and this isn't a surface-level conversation. But that's the beauty of this journey. We're not chasing surface. We're not performing strength. We're learning to walk in truth. And the truth is, peace and pain are not always opposites. Sometimes, peace comes through the very road we tried to avoid. Hardship looks different for everyone. For some, it's the wreckage of addiction or the pain of relapse. For others, it's the silent weight of depression, the grief of losing someone they love, or the chaos of a mind that won't slow down. Some are walking through the divorce, or betrayal, or chronic illness. Some are learning how to live again after years of pretending. Hardship wears many faces, but no matter what it looks like, it always leaves us feeling disoriented, uncertain, and tempted to shut down. Pain has a way of making the world feel smaller. It whispers lies about who we are and what we deserve. And left unchecked, it can make us forget that peace is still possible. But the invitation in this part of the prayer is not to pretend pain doesn't exist. It's not to minimize our wounds or rush through grief. It's to accept that hardship is not a detour. It's a part of the path. It's not proof that something's gone wrong. It's often the very ground where God begins to do his deepest work. Acceptance doesn't mean we stop feeling. It doesn't mean we stop longing for healing or praying for change. It simply means we stop fighting the fact that this is where we are. We stop resisting the reality of our story. And in that surrender, something sacred begins to happen. Peace comes, not because the pain disappears, but because we are no longer at war with it. We begin to find rest, not in answers, but in presence. In the presence of God who suffers with us, who knows what it means to be abandoned, misunderstood, pierced, and alone. We worship a Savior who did not avoid hardship. He walked into it, eyes wide open for the sake of love. And because he did, our suffering is never meaningless. It becomes a place of communion, a place where God does not abandon us, but draws near. But maybe this is the invitation that hardship quietly brings. Not a reason to despair, but a new way of seeing, a new way of trusting, a new way of healing that doesn't deny the pain, but passes through it and finds peace on the other side. Not all hardship announces itself as holy. Sometimes it looks like failure, like closed doors and broken trust and sleepless nights. Sometimes it feels like rejection or silence or being asked to let go of something we begged God to let us keep. It can feel like being lost in a fog we never saw coming. In those moments, it's easy to believe that peace is far away, that we've missed the path somehow or taken a wrong turn that can't be corrected. But the truth is, God doesn't wait for us on the other side of pain. He walks with us in it. His peace is not postponed until we're healed. It's offered in the middle of the wound. There's a strange kind of comfort that begins to take shape when we stop demanding that life be easy and instead start asking that it be meaningful. When we stop measuring God's love by our comfort level and begin to trust that His presence is enough, even when the answers don't come. Acceptance is not giving up. It's giving in, not to defeat, but to grace. It's loosening our grip on how we thought life should go and opening ourselves to what God might be doing right here in the unexpected, in the unwanted, in the unresolved. Some of the most profound peace we will ever know will not come from the absence of hardship, but from the clarity that hardship brings. When the usual distractions fall away, when our illusions of control are stripped down, what's left is raw honesty, and God meets us there. He doesn't flinch at our pain. He doesn't grow impatient with our doubt. He doesn't demand we move on. He stays. And in that staying, peace begins to find a way in, not all at once, not always with fanfare, but quietly, deeply, like water finding its level. Hardship strips away what's unnecessary. It teaches us what matters. It teaches us to pray in whispers instead of declarations, to breathe through tears instead of performing through smiles. It teaches us that faith isn't proven in our ability to avoid pain, but in our willingness to trust that God is still good when life is not, that He is still near when we feel alone, that He is still working when everything looks broken. It's here in this uncomfortable middle that real faith is born, not faith in a perfect outcome, but faith in a perfect God. Peace that comes through hardship is quieter than we expected. It's not flashy or loud. It's not a feeling that washes over us and makes everything okay. It's more like a steadying hand on your back, like the sense that you can take one more step, even though yesterday you didn't think you could. It's knowing you are not abandoned. It's choosing to believe against all the noise that your story is still being written, and it hasn't ended in the valley. When we accept hardship not as punishment, not as proof that we've done something wrong, but as part of the refining process that God uses to shape our hearts, we stop fighting what we cannot control. We begin to cooperate with grace. We start to trust that maybe the very thing we wanted to escape is the soil where something new can grow. And that kind of trust, that kind of surrender, opens us up to a peace that doesn't depend on the resolution of our pain, but on the presence of God within it. In this space, peace becomes less about the removal of hard things and more about the renewal of hope in the midst of them. It's about remembering that hardship is not the end of the story. It's part of the transformation. And if we allow it, it will make us softer, kinder, more patient with others, more honest with ourselves, more awake to what matters. That is the strange, sacred alchemy of suffering in the hands of God. It doesn't just break us, it remakes us. And that kind of remaking, that slow, painful, beautiful work, is what turns hardship into a pathway, a path that doesn't bypass the pain, but walks through it, a path that doesn't demand answers, but clings to presence, a path that leads us step by step into the kind of peace that doesn't vanish when storms come, the kind of peace that holds, the kind that stays. And if we're honest, that's the kind of peace most of us have been craving our whole lives. Not the kind we can manufacture with control or manipulate with positivity, but the kind we stumble into when we finally stop trying to fix everything and simply let ourselves be found. Because hardship has a way of revealing just how limited our strength is. And in that revelation, we finally open the door to grace. There's a certain kind of clarity that only comes when everything else falls away. When the scaffolding we leaned on, success, certainty, reputation, routines, starts to crack, we're left with questions we didn't know how to ask before. Questions like, who am I without what I've lost? What do I believe when the healing I prayed for hasn't come? What does it mean to trust God when I can't trace what He's doing? These are not comfortable questions, but they are holy ones. And hardship has a way of carving out the space for us to ask them honestly. It's here, inside these questions, inside the ache, that the pathway to peace starts to take shape. Not because we suddenly feel better, but because we are no longer pretending. We stop striving to prove we're okay. We stop performing strength. We stop numbing just long enough to feel what's real. And when we do, we make room for something deeper than relief. We make room for truth. And truth, even when it hurts, always moves us closer to peace. Sometimes that peace looks like the ability to breathe again after weeks of anxiety. Sometimes it looks like a quiet cry in a dark room where you finally say, I can't do this alone, and realize you don't have to. Sometimes it looks like telling your story out loud to someone who doesn't run away. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed when your whole body says, don't. These moments may not look like victory from the outside, but in the kingdom of God, these are the seeds of resurrection. These are the places where new life begins. The path isn't always straight, and there are days you'll wonder if you're going backwards. But peace isn't about perfect progress. It's about presence, God's presence, your own presence, the ability to remain in the story long enough for the light to return. That's what makes peace a process, not a destination. It unfolds slowly. It grows in silence. It deepens in the places we used to avoid. And it has nothing to do with getting what we want, and everything to do with discovering who we are in the hands of a God who never lets go. Peace doesn't always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like standing still when everything in you wants to run. Sometimes it feels like breathing through grief instead of drowning in it. Sometimes it feels like forgiving someone who won't ever say sorry. Sometimes it feels like forgiving yourself when shame says you're beyond grace. And in all of it, peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to stay in the process with God, trusting that even when it doesn't look like it, you are healing. There is no shame in hardship. There is no failure in pain. And there is no timeline on peace. What matters is not how fast you move, but how honest you're willing to be. Because honesty is the soil where peace grows. The kind of honesty that says, God, I don't understand, but I still believe you're with me. That's the kind of faith that breaks chains. That's the kind of prayer that changes us. Not always our circumstances, but our character, our capacity, our clarity. It's the kind of prayer that transforms hardship from something that happened to us into something God is using to grow something through us. And when we begin to live from that place, not of resistance, but of surrender, not of fear, but of trust, we begin to walk in a peace that doesn't depend on everything being okay. We begin to walk in the kind of peace that Jesus spoke about when he said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you." I do not give to you as the world gives. The world gives peace through certainty and comfort. Jesus gives peace. This is what it means to accept hardship as a pathway to peace, not to love the pain, but to let God meet us in it, not to pretend it doesn't hurt, but to believe that pain is not the end of the story, not to avoid the valley, but to trust that the valley is where we'll find God's hand, steady, faithful, and already leading us home. Sometimes the most powerful prayer you can offer in the middle of hardship is simply, God, help me stay. Not stay in a situation that's abusive or unsafe, but stay in the process. Stay in the discomfort of transformation. Stay in the room where healing takes time. Stay in your body when everything in you wants to shut down. Stay in your story, even when it's heavy, even when it hurts, because the temptation to run is real, especially when the ache feels unbearable. But what if staying is how the peace comes? Not because staying is heroic, but because staying keeps us open to God's mercy, open to grace, open to whatever He's doing that we can't yet see. There's a moment in the life of every person in recovery, whether from addiction, trauma, anxiety, codependency, or grief, when you realize that hardship isn't just an obstacle, it's the terrain, it's the actual road we're walking, and peace isn't waiting for us at the end of it like a prize for those who finish strong. Peace is found in the walking itself, in the choices we make every day to return, to breathe, to reach out instead of isolate, to pray instead of perform, to grieve instead of numb. These aren't big, impressive gestures. They're small, sacred ones, but they are how we move forward. And maybe that's one of the greatest miracles of recovery, the way God uses what once felt like death to bring life. The way the same heart that once hid behind walls can begin to open again. The way peace doesn't come from getting what we always wanted, but from learning to be present in what we have. The way hardship, when surrendered to God, becomes holy ground. Not because it's easy, not because we'd ever choose it, but because it reveals something unshakable about God, about love, and about who we're becoming through it. That's why we don't minimize our pain, but we also don't let it define us. We acknowledge it, we name it, and then we place it into the hands of a God who wastes nothing. Not one tear, not one sleepless night, not one broken prayer. In His hands, even the pain that almost undid us becomes part of the story He is redeeming. Slowly, steadily, deeply, not on our schedule, but in His time and in His way. So we keep walking, we keep returning, we keep choosing to show up to the day we've been given. And when peace comes, whether as a whisper or a wave, we receive it. Not because everything is resolved, but because we are being restored. And the more we accept that hardship is not the opposite of peace, but often the way into it, the more we begin to live with an unshakable kind of hope. A hope that doesn't need life to be perfect. A hope that doesn't demand proof before it trusts. A hope that holds space for grief and joy at the same time and calls them both sacred. That's the kind of hope that will carry you when your own strength runs out. The kind that doesn't depend on outcomes, but on the one who holds the outcome. The kind that lets you breathe in the dark because you know the light has not forgotten you. The kind that sings, even if quietly, even if just under your breath, God is still with me. I am not alone. This moment, even this, is not wasted. And maybe that's what peace really is. Not the absence of the storm, but the presence of God within it. The God who does not explain away our pain, but who enters it, who joins us in the fire and walks with us through it. The God who doesn't abandon us to hardship, but reshapes it into something that refines us, strengthens us, and slowly remakes us from the inside out. That's the God who meets us on this path. That's the peace he offers. Not one that ignores reality, but one that walks through it with us step by step, breath by breath, until the storm passes or until we are strong enough to keep walking through it. So we learn to walk with peace that doesn't shout over the pain, but sits with us in it. A peace that's willing to wait, that doesn't demand we be farther along, that doesn't rush the story God is telling. We learn to listen to that still, small voice, not the one of fear or pressure or shame, but the voice of the shepherd who leads gently, who knows how fragile we are and doesn't push us past what grace has prepared us for. Hardship is not a sign that we've failed. It's a sign that we're alive, that we're growing, that we're being refined. It's a sign that something matters enough to hurt. And while the world may tell us to avoid pain at all costs, Jesus walks straight into it, not to glorify it, but to redeem it. He doesn't ask us to love suffering, but he does ask us to follow him into it, trusting that he will bring resurrection on the other side. Sometimes that resurrection is quiet. Sometimes it's subtle, but it always begins where we least expect it, in the places we thought were lost, in the parts of ourselves we thought were too far gone. And this journey, this surrender to peace through hardship, is never something we do alone. One of the greatest lies pain tells us is that we're the only ones who feel this way, that no one else understands, that everyone else is handling life better. But when we begin to speak honestly, when we show up in rooms full of other imperfect, hurting, growing people, we realize something powerful. We are not alone. We never were. And that solidarity, that shared humanity, that grace that flows between stories, it's part of the peace, it's part of the healing. There will still be days when you forget this truth, days when the weight of your circumstances makes it hard to breathe, days when old lies feel louder than the promises of God. That's okay. Peace doesn't mean you never struggle. It just means you don't struggle alone. It means there is a place to bring your fear, your failure, your fatigue, and still be loved, still be wanted, still be whole in the eyes of the one who sees you clearly and calls you his. So let the process be slow if it needs to be. Let the healing be messy. Let the journey be uneven. There's no rush. There's no race. There's only this moment, this breath, this next small act of trust. And maybe that's what faith really looks like. Not big declarations or perfect confidence, but the simple decision to keep showing up, to keep placing your heart in God's hands, even when it's bruised, even when you don't know what comes next. This is the kind of peace that changes us, not by removing the fire, but by walking with us through it, not by fixing everything, but by freeing us to live even in the midst of the unresolved. It's the kind of peace that holds your hand when you're trembling, that whispers, "You're not done yet." That breathes strength into your soul when you think you have nothing left. And little by little, that peace becomes your posture. Not just something you visit, but something you carry. Not something that waits for the end of hardship, but something that walks through it with grace, with dignity, with faith. Because the truth is, you are being changed. Even if you can't see it, even if you don't feel it, even if you're still in the thick of it, unsure whether any of this is working, God is doing something. He is shaping something beautiful, even here, especially here. And in time, what once felt like devastation may just become the place where you discovered the kind of peace you never thought you could have. Not because the pain disappeared, but because God was in it and he was enough. So here you are, still breathing, still listening, still showing up. And maybe that's the greatest evidence of grace. Not that all the pain has lifted, but that you're still here, still willing to trust even when you don't understand, still willing to believe that peace is possible, even in the middle of your story, not because everything's fixed, but because you are learning how to stay. Accepting hardship as a pathway to peace isn't something you master. It's something you return to again and again, sometimes daily, sometimes by the minute, and that's okay. That return, that holy, repeated return, is where your strength is being formed. It's where your faith is becoming real. It's where your identity is being rewritten, not by what you've endured, but by the one who walks with you through it. There's no shame in not having it all together, no shame in still struggling to believe, no shame in carrying questions you haven't answered yet. That doesn't disqualify you from peace. It makes you human. It makes you honest. And it places you exactly where God can meet you in the ache, in the uncertainty, in the place where you finally stop striving long enough to be still. So let this be your prayer today. Not a polished one, not a perfect one, but an honest. God, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of resisting the very path you've asked me to walk. I'm tired of carrying pain like it's proof that I've failed. Help me to see that hardship is not the end of the story. Help me to trust that peace can come even here, even now, even to me. Teach me how to accept what I cannot change and how to open my hands in the middle of the struggle, not to give up, but to let you in. Because I believe you are with me. I believe you are good. And I believe that even this pain, especially this pain, is being woven into something holy. I don't need all the answers. I just need your presence. And you have never failed to give it. Amen.
And if you've been listening to this and wondering where to go with all of it, where to bring the ache, where to walk out what you've been hearing, I want to invite you into a space that's been life-changing for so many of us. Celebrate Recovery is a place where you don't have to pretend, a place where no one expects you to clean yourself up before you come in, a place where healing happens slowly, honestly, together. At Peters Creek Baptist Church, we meet every Friday night at 7 p.m. at 6300 Library Road in South Park. We open the doors, we share truth, we sit in grace. Whether you're struggling with addiction, anxiety, trauma, grief, codependency, anger, or just trying to navigate the weight of life, you're welcome. If you're not in the Pittsburgh area, there's still a place for you. You can find a Celebrate Recovery group near you by visiting crlocator.com. Just enter your zip code, and you'll see meetings happening all across the country. There's also a sister group that meets Monday nights at 7 p.m. at Crossroads Ministries in Finleyville. You don't have to walk this road alone. Truly, you don't. For more info about our church and our ministries, head to pcbc.church. But more than anything, I just want you to know this. There's hope. Not in some abstract way, but in a real, gritty, steady kind of way. And there's space for you in it. Whether this is your first step or your 100th, you are not too far gone. You are not too late, and you are not alone. We'd love to walk with you.
In our next episode, we'll lean into the line of the Serenity Prayer that speaks to trust at its deepest level. Taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. That's where we'll go next. But for now, stay with what's stirred in you. Let peace take root in the soil of your story. And know this, your hardship is not wasted. Your honesty is not weakness. And your peace is still possible. One day at a time, one moment at a time, hand in hand with the God who walks every step with you.